Spotify. Spotify was in the news for something different now as it relates to Joe Rogan. So they have staffers that are now reportedly planning to plan a strike if their demands are not met. And this is directly to Joe Rogan and his podcast, and it really is about the content that he's been using for the Joe Rogan Experience. It's primarily the episodes featuring conversations and topics related to transgender issues. Like they're planning to strike if they don't get a chance to, somewhat edit or pick what episodes can come out or not. Now keep in mind, they paid him $100 million in their agreement was announced back in May to bring him over. Spotify stock started to soar once he got over there. So this was a really big deal. Now there are, with the employees trying to quote unquote, boycott, or they're upset about his content. Like, is Spotify tripping? Like, you bring a guy over and pay him $100 million to, be one of the biggest podcasts associated with your streaming service, then you try to cripple his content. Like, what do you think about that just overall and from a Spotify standpoint? They've ruffled the feathers with Joe Budden. Now they're trying to, I guess, somewhat censor what Joe Rogan is putting out. What are your thoughts on that, man? Are they tripping or what?
This doesn't seem like the most elevated thing to say to the particular staffers who have a problem with this and have a problem with Joe Rogan, but too fucking bad. Joe Rogan is who he is, and you know who you sign. You sign the guy who's going to sit down and talk to your favorite comedian, but he's also going to sit down and talk to Ben Shapiro.
Yep.
And he doesn't, and him personally, he doesn't have some of the most elevated opinions on certain concepts. So for you to all of a sudden think that he's going to be somebody else just because he is signed to Spotify, that is you being a petulant child, and you need to understand that you are a staffer at Spotify and you don't actually own the company.
Point.
I don't know what they thought they were getting. I've watched. There are certain times when I see those Joe Rogan clips would pop up on my YouTube feed, and I'd say, okay, I don't want to really watch this. But like if it was somebody I was interested in, like when he sat down and talked to, like I said, Ben Shapiro. I don't really care what Ben Shapiro has to say. It's probably going to be something antithetical to what it is that I live my life by. And like I said, I've been vocal enough about what I think about Ben Shapiro and Candace Owens and people like that, but at the same time, when he sits down and talks to Charlie Murphy, God rest the dead, when he sits down and talks to John Witherspoon, or when he talks or George Wallace, like I'm interested because like I have a certain interest in comedians and comedy, and when he sits down and talks to I can't think of his real name right now, Ashley Larry. Like that was a fantastic interview.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
Donnell Rawlings. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. You know what I'm saying? But I because I do enjoy his comedy as well.
Witherspoon was good.
That's what I sit and listen to. If you're not interested in what it is that Joe Rogan has to say about certain things, you're not going to be interested in certain people that he sits down to interview. So I would just tell all those people to grow up and understand that this man's been signed to a $100 million contract, and you're a staffer at Spotify. And if you don't like what it is he has to say, then hey, you're probably not in the particular bracket of wage that you can say anything about it anyway. If you wanted to have at the same time, if Joe Rogan wanted to maintain his independence, once again, this is something we've heard a lot when we talk about what Joe Budden had to say, then you probably should have never signed with Spotify in the first place.
Realistically, if this is based on old episodes, the Spotify employees had time to, they could have protested this before this happened. If this is something new, then I guess I can kind of understand it. But Joe Rogan's always been like this.
Essentially, it's kind of like when something goes on and the masses don't like it, and they want to start these petitions to try to make people do other things. And at the end of the day, it's pointless. How are you gonna make somebody that spent their money view what you want just because you want it that way? If you're employed by an employer and your job is to much just edit these shows or put them out, whatever their job is, It has nothing to do with the content. The content is what got him the deal in the first place, and it's a talk show. So if you have a talk show, you're supposed to talk to people that essentially have different ideas, thoughts, and processes. That's what makes that talk show or podcast popular. You know what I'm saying? So I don't really get how the employees think that they should have a say on what's put out. You probably should find another employer or somebody else that would give them that option. But essentially, Spotify is huge, and it's like the new record labels. You know what I'm saying?
Doesn't this just mirror Shut Up and Dribble and NFL protests?
Good call.
Does that mirror?
There you go.
Shut Up and Dribble?
Call.
As far as the employers?
As far as the whole concept. Well, if you're mad about something, why don't you quit and go do something else?
Mm-hmm.
The show didn't have somebody censoring it from the beginning. Then why would an employee come in and decide that they want to be that censor?
But I guess the same argument could be made.
The numbers. They want the numbers. They want the celebrity interviews, but they don't want the controversy. And the thing is, if you don't want the controversy, you shouldn't have courted Joe Rogan in the first place, because there's always going to be a certain when he would start talking about Bernie Sanders, and then there were people who were like, oh, why is he talking about Bernie Sanders? And he's always going to give someone a voice that you don't want to have a voice.
Right.
I mean, did you not know what you were signing up for, though? Did you not know what you were signing up for? Because we know, all of us whom are familiar with his podcast and his content, you know what comes with that before you give somebody $100 million. Like, you know what's going to come with that.
But I think that we're still having the same argument of like the ownership of Spotify versus the employers, right? Because the employees don't have any control over, who they hire like that. Right. They could potentially boycott to start when this stuff started happening, but they don't have any control over that aspect of it. And my comparison was the same thing, like same with the NFL and the players, but NFL would be Spotify, players would be the employees. So,
right.
the differences.
I kind of get it, but I kind of don't, because I mean, the reason why I don't, I see where you're coming from, but at the same time, kind of disagree, because in this particular situation, the NFL, they're playing a game, then they're telling them once the game is over that they don't have a say-so on anything else unless it's sports related. On the other hand, with this Spotify deal, you have a show that's popular because of its content. You have employees that want to go in and censor that content. You're not the one that signed the deal.
That's fair, I guess. I can see that argument.
It is.
I mean, it's obviously different. They're two different ideas. I just think it's similar in the fact that it's protest over a social issue. And it kind of mirrors itself in a way, but it is different, absolutely.
Kind of, but what I don't get here lately, well, maybe not lately, it's probably been within the last maybe 10 or so years. Everything that goes on has to have some kind of sensor or a button that needs to be pushed in order to rub everybody the right way. Nothing's going to appease everyone. And people never realize that, because what kind of life are you going to live where everything is pretty much a PR agent every time you open your mouth? You know what I'm saying?
That's not realistic. That's not realistic thinking, to think, that, like you said, everything is going to, appease everyone. It's just not going to happen.
If you've enjoyed this segment of the New Old Heads podcast, make sure to join our live show every Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern at twitch.tv/bringingdowntheband, and join our private Discord community with talks on hip-hop, music, news, and everything else.